Good evening,
Shit. Sorry,
what?
I'm here.
What were you doing?
I was trying to, I'm not used to this chair rolling. I had to run across the pasture.
For what?
Jesus.
What were you doing?
I had to pee
alien?
before it started.
Oh, Lord. I thought the aliens were
Jesus
trying to get you.
Christ.
I don't usually
Yeah.
get a rolling chair.
We thought you got abducted.
God.
You're out there in the pasture, and all of a sudden you were gone.
Oh, well, good evening, everybody. I'm glad,
Evening.
Shelley, you made it. Welcome back to another weekly episode of Everything Vaguely Paranormal. As always, I am Blake Smith with me, our partners in the paranormal, Miss Shelley Pruitt, Mr. Ryan Roberts. How are y'all doing tonight?
Good. Did y'all hear that explosion in the background just now? Jesus.
That was up here with me.
We do
Yeah,
have
Happy New Year.
fireworks. Yeah, we do have fireworks going on. So happy New Year to everybody who is stopping in to spend a little bit of time with us before you go out to shenanigans. Trust us, we have some shenanigans to get to as well.
Yes, your shenanigans.
Shenanigans.
There is no one drinking yet.
No,
Not yet. Not yet. So
Let's fix that. Happy New Year's Eve.
Oh, Happy New Year's
Eve. Absolutely.
You love this. I have an East Texas champagne flute right there.
And if you're listening to us the next day, we hope that your new year is going well so far. So,
right.
Anyways, y'all are doing good tonight?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, good.
Gonna be doing better.
One of those.
While.
Well, one of those confusing ones, because tonight we're going to be talking about disclosure when it comes to aliens and UFOs. So when you're looking up in the sky tonight going, is that a firework? Is that a drone? Is that a, what the fuck is that?
Now, I do want to say that I do find it interesting that you chose this topic, because me and Shelley have been the alien and UFO nuts. And you, when we first started, were kind of like, that's not really my thing, blah, blah, blah. So have you come around to it now, or it was something because you don't know a whole lot of, you wanted to tackle it to see where you stand, or what's going on?
I chose this topic because obviously with everything that's going on right now with like the drones and whatnot, and of course everybody's got a cell phone camera and can record whatever they want. There's all these videos that are out there. And you're right. When we started, no, I wasn't the alien guy. I had to come around to it. And so I chose this topic because we talked with Daniel Allen Jones is where this basically started from, with this idea of like, what has disclosure looked like throughout the years? And I wanted to kind of try to put that into a timeline for everybody so that everybody could kind of understand, no, we're not being told everything that we should be told, in my opinion. No. But at the end of this, I'm not going to jump my story, because at the end of this, I actually wrote down something that I usually don't do, our discussion portion. I wrote down my stance.
Okay.
And I will read it to you of where I stand now versus where I was a few years ago. So that's kind of the reason why I did choose this topic, because I'm not the alien guy.
Right. And not to say you didn't believe in it. It just wasn't in your wheelhouse, when we first started.
Yeah. I've had experiences.
It wasn't
I've seen
one of
things.
your passions like it was for me and Ryan. And we drug you kicking and screaming. Now you got a little interest, don't you?
No, I do have a little bit of interest.
No, you do.
Yes, you are correct. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started, because as you can tell, we probably got like 70 years worth of information to cover. And I'm going to try and do that in one episode.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Well, in the early hours of July 1952, air traffic controllers at Washington National Airport stared in disbelief. Their radar screens were lighting up with unidentified objects, impossibly fast, defying the known laws of physics. Jet fighters were scrambled, but the UFOs simply disappeared, only to return the next night. Pilots and ground crew alike saw them with their own eyes, yet official reports dismissed the phenomenon as nothing more than a quirk of the weather. But what if it wasn't? What if the events of that summer and countless others like it are part of a story the government doesn't want us to hear? And this isn't just a story of one place or time. Take, for instance, a quiet road in Minnesota, 1979. Deputy Sheriff Val Johnson was driving his patrol car late at night when a blinding flash of light enveloped him. He lost consciousness for nearly 40 minutes. When he awoke, his car was mangled. Windshield cracked, antenna bent, and headlights shattered. His watch and the clock in the car both stopped. Johnson himself had burns around his eyes, as if he'd stared directly into something beyond human technology. Or consider Rendlesham Forest, 1980. Of course, we've covered this story in depth on a previous episode. But U.S. Air Force personnel stationed at an RAF base in England reported seeing strange lights in a triangular craft moving silently through the trees. One officer got close enough to describe the markings on its metallic surface. The next morning, investigators found scorch marks on the ground and radiation traces that couldn't be explained. The Air Force's official logs described the incident, but no satisfactory explanation has ever been given. These are just fragments of a larger puzzle, a puzzle pieced together over decades of sightings, experiences, and secrets. Tonight, we're pulling those pieces together. From radar blips over Washington to the wreckage at Roswell, we'll confront one of humanity's biggest questions. Are we truly alone? Now, these stories, scattered across decades and continents, share a common thread. They defy explanation. But they also share something else, a pattern of secrecy, of questions left unanswered and mysteries brushed aside. In the summer of 1947, this pattern began to take shape in a way the world couldn't ignore. It started with a quiet flight over the mountains of Washington state when a private pilot named Kenneth Arnold spotted something in the skies that would change everything. Kenneth Arnold, a 32-year-old businessman and experienced pilot, was flying near Mount Rainier on June 24, 1947. His goal that day was straightforward: search for missing military aircraft and possibly collect a reward. It was a clear afternoon with perfect flying conditions. As Arnold scanned the mountains below, his focus shifted skyward when a bright flash of light caught his attention. At first, Arnold thought it might be sunlight reflecting off another plane. But when he looked closer, he saw 9 objects flying in formation, weaving around each other with ease, and moving in a straight line. They didn't look like any aircraft Arnold had ever seen. Instead of wings, they had a sleek, disc-like shape, and their movement was just as baffling, almost as if they were skipping across the air like stones on water. Arnold landed his plane and shared his experience, expecting it to be met with curiosity, perhaps skepticism. Instead, his report spread like wildfire through the media. Newspapers quickly latched onto his description of the objects as saucer-like, and within days, the phrase flying saucer became a cultural sensation. Publications like the East Oregonian emphasized Arnold's credibility, describing him as a respected and skilled pilot, while others marveled at the idea of supersonic discs gliding through the sky. Arnold's detailed and confident account fascinated the public. His reputation as an experienced aviator bolstered his claims, lending weight to what might have otherwise been dismissed as a wild story. Readers were captivated by the idea that such advanced technology could exist, with some speculating that it might be extraterrestrial in origin.
Right. I mean, think about this too. I mean, you're in the 1940s. The technology that we have are these, planes with these loud engines that are flying around that run on gasoline. We don't have anything, even to this day, that looks like that can fly and maneuver that easily. So what was it? Who knows?
Exactly. Well, the phrase flying saucer itself seemed to capture the imagination of a post-war America, already gripped by fears of foreign technology and the unknown. Yet not all reactions were serious. While many respected Arnold's story, skeptics and humorists turned his sighting into fodder for cartoons and jokes.
Of course they did.
Depicting literal saucers flying through the sky. Some dismissed the object's optical illusions or mundane phenomena. Well, despite this, the national fascination was undeniable, and Arnold's report became the first domino in a series of events that would lead to official government investigations. Behind the scenes, Arnold's account didn't just ignite public intrigue. It raised alarm within the military. If these objects were real, and their capabilities suggested they were, they could represent a serious threat to national security. His sighting couldn't be ignored, but Kenneth Arnold's sighting was just the beginning. His detailed account of objects moving at impossible speeds sparked a wave of public fascination and other sightings. Reports of strange crafts flooded newspapers and military desks alike, each story adding another piece to an unsettling puzzle. Then, just weeks later, something happened in the quiet desert of New Mexico that turned speculation into full-blown suspicion. Wreckage was found, explanations were given and retracted, and whispers of a government cover-up began to take shape. The Roswell incident wasn't just another UFO story. It became a defining moment in the history of the phenomenon, cementing the idea that something extraordinary might be happening and that the truth was being hidden. It was the summer of 1947 when a rancher named Mac Brazel stumbled upon something unusual on his property near Roswell, New Mexico. Scattered across the arid landscape were strange pieces of debris, lightweight metallic sheets, fibers that wouldn't burn, and beams with odd hieroglyphic-like symbols etched into their surface. Again, we've covered this one on another episode as well. Actually, on the 75th year anniversary.
Well, it's the 75th year. I did the story on Roswell. Yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say Braswell. Some people say,
Braswell or Brazel. Yeah.
I heard
Mac Brazel is
Brazel, Brazil. I've heard that. I listened to countless
yeah.
things that they all say. I went with Brazil. So Brazel, Brazil. Kind of sounded like Brazier. I don't know. Anyways.
That's a whole different podcast.
Yes.
Here's to Braziers. Yay.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, okay, now I'm going to switch it up. Brazel. There we go. Because now that's stuck in my brain.
There you go.
Well, Brazel couldn't make sense of what he was seeing. It wasn't from any aircraft or weather equipment he recognized. Puzzled, Brazel reported his findings to the local sheriff, who quickly alerted military at Roswell Army Airfield. What happened next would become one of the most controversial moments in UFO history. When the military arrived, they swiftly collected the debris and brought it back to the base. On July 8, 1947, the Roswell Army Airfield issued a press release stating they had recovered a, quote, flying disc. And the announcement caused an immediate media frenzy. Newspapers ran headlines about a captured UFO, and the possibility of extraterrestrial contact seemed closer than ever. But within 24 hours, the story changed. The military retracted its initial statement, claiming the wreckage was nothing more than a weather balloon for a classified project. They even staged photographs showing officers posing with debris that didn't match the rancher's description. The sudden reversal left the public questioning what was really going on. Why would the military make such a dramatic claim only to backtrack so quickly? Now, among those involved in the recovery was Major Jesse it's Marcel, right?
Jesse Marcel, yep.
Yeah. An intelligence officer at the Roswell Army Airfield. And Marcel was one of the first to examine the debris and was immediately struck by its unusual properties. He described the material as incredibly light, yet impossibly strong, unlike anything he'd seen before. Attempts to burn or dent the fragments failed, and the strange symbols on the beams only deepened the mystery. Years later, Marcel would break his silence, stating that the weather balloon explanation was just a fabrication. And in interviews, he insisted that the material he handed that day wasn't from this earth. Marcel's credibility as a seasoned military officer made his statement hard to dismiss, and his testimony reignited interest in Roswell decades after the incident. But Roswell didn't just spark curiosity. It created a blueprint for suspicion. The sudden shift in the official narrative from, quote, flying disc to weather balloon left the public questioning the military's credibility. Adding to this, the debris was swiftly removed, never to be seen again, and with no clear explanation for its disappearance. Years later, government documents linked the wreckage to Project Mogul, a classified program involving high-altitude balloons designed to detect Soviet nuclear tests. While this explanation seemed plausible on the surface, it didn't account for key eyewitness testimonies. Rancher Mac Brazel described materials unlike anything he'd ever seen, and Rancher Mac Brazel, and Major Jesse Marcel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I heard it in my head say something different, so... But anyways, and Major Jesse Marcel later claimed the weather balloon story was just a fabrication. Other witnesses added to the mystery. Mortician Glenn Dennis claimed the military inquired about small child-sized coffins. And Roswell Public Affairs Officer Walter, I believe it's Haut, swore in a later...
H-A-U-T, yeah.
Yeah. Swore in a later affidavit that extraterrestrial craft had been recovered. Meanwhile, later, Freedom of Information Act or FOIA requests revealed that crucial records from the Roswell had either vanished or been destroyed, raising more questions about what really happened. The 1994 Air Force report, which revisited the case, concluded the claims of alien bodies were likely the result of crash test dummies used in later experiments. But the timing of the report, decades after the incident, only deepened public skepticism. But Roswell's cultural impact is undeniable. It became a cornerstone of modern UFO lore, fueling demands for government transparency and the growing belief that something extraordinary was being hidden.
And still the most well-known flying saucer alien case.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
It's the most well-known one in the world. So,
yeah. Well, Roswell wasn't just a strange event. It became the foundation for something much larger. With growing public curiosity and military concern, the government began to shift its focus from isolated incidents to a systematic approach. Investigative programs like Project Sign were born, marking the beginning of an era where secrecy and denial became the hallmarks of UFO encounters.
Mm-hmm.
But Roswell also did something else. It raised a question that still lingers today. What happens when the truth is too big to hide? The summer of 1947 left the U.S. government grappling with more questions than answers. Kenneth Arnold's sighting had opened the floodgates, and Roswell had poured gasoline on the fire. Public fascination with UFOs had become a national obsession. Reports of strange objects in the sky flooded newspapers, and the military found itself under increasing pressure to provide explanations. The government's approach was no longer reactive. It became proactive. So the Air Force launched Project Sign, the first formal attempt to systematically investigate UFO sightings. And this marked the start of an era where the phenomena would be studied, explained, and, in most cases, dismissed. Now, at its core, Project Sign was a serious endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
In early 1948, the U.S. Air Force initiated Project Sign, recognizing the need for a formal response to the growing wave of these UFO reports. And unlike earlier ad hoc investigations, Project Sign was serious, structured, and tasked with analyzing sightings to determine their origin and whether they posed a threat to national security. Investigators were thorough, gathering eyewitness reports, radar data, and physical evidence. Sightings involving high-speed maneuvers or unexplained aerial phenomena received special attention. Project Sign operated under the assumption that the phenomenon warranted genuine scrutiny, and for a time, it seemed open to exploring every possibility, even extraterrestrial origins.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most significant cases examined was the Gorman dogfight in October 1948. In the clearest night skies over Fargo, North Dakota on October 1st, 1948, Lieutenant George Gorman took to the air for what should have been a routine training mission. At just 25 years old, Gorman was already an experienced pilot, confident in his skills and accustomed to the familiar hum of his airplane. But that night, something would challenge his understanding of the skies and himself. As Gorman flew over the city, he noticed a small, bright light moving in the distance. At first, he thought it might be another aircraft, but as he approached, the light didn't behave as expected. It lacked the structure of a plane. No wings, no tail, no visible fuselage, just a glowing white orb about 6 to 8 inches in diameter. I mean, that's tiny, y'all.
Right.
That's 6 to 8 inches. I mean, that's tiny. Okay, well, that might be average to some men.
I'm saying, I'm saying, like,
Sorry.
as he's right
There's
up
to be
on
an
it.
average.
I'm saying, are you saying as he's right up on it, or what he sees out of his plane?
No, what he sees out of his plane. So I actually say
Right.
here a little bit how close he got to it.
Right.
Yeah, so it could have been a lot bigger than that, obviously, because you'll see here a little bit how close he got to it. But,
Oh, yeah.
So intrigued, Gorman decided to pursue it. What followed was a harrowing 27-minute chase that would later be called the Gorman dogfight. The object moved with incredible speed, weaving through the night sky with agility that no aircraft could match. Gorman pushed his airplane to its limits, but the light seemed to toy with him, evading every attempt to close in. At one point, it executed a steep vertical climb, forcing Gorman's plane into a stall as he tried to follow. The object's movements were not just fast, they were precise. It stopped and started abruptly, changed direction without hesitation, and climbed at angles that defied physics. The closest Gorman came to the object was about 500 feet, at which point it abruptly shot upward and disappeared into the night. But Gorman wasn't alone in witnessing the strange encounter. Controllers at Fargo's Hector Airport had been tracking the object on radar, watching as it moved erratically at speeds and angles that no conventional aircraft could achieve.
Mm-hmm.
Ground observers also saw the bright light zigzagging through the sky, corroborating Gorman's account. And when the Air Force investigated, their official conclusion was that Gorman had encountered a weather balloon.
Of course it
Yeah.
was.
That can go that fast, stop on a dime, turn, and go vertical. Well, sure.
Yeah.
I don't know
Well-
what other balloons y'all got, but
Exactly. Well, they suggested atmospheric conditions and the stress of the situation might have caused him to misinterpret its movements. But Gorman rejected this explanation outright. As a skilled pilot, he knew the difference between a balloon drifting in the wind and an object moving with intelligent control.
right.
And the Gorman dogfight became one of the most compelling cases for Project Sign. It was exactly the type of encounter. Go ahead.
I'm saying that's the thing that has bugged me about all of this the entire time as we've gone through history. They spoon feed you this stupid explanation that they just expect you're going to believe, like just the dumbest thing possible, and they're like, "Yeah, they'll be good with this." No, it's not.
It's
yeah.
insulting to
Right.
a thinking person's intelligence.
Right.
That we're just going to believe that because you pull out something out that doesn't look anything like what anybody saw, but trust us.
Well, it's not just thinking people. It's people who, some of these trained observers who have seen these things and have observed these things. And like,
that's
look,
the biggest thing. Yeah,
that is I'm a accomplished pilot. I know what I saw. Look, I'm an ace. I've got all these different accomplishments, and you're going to tell me that what I was looking at was a weather balloon?
Yeah.
And in the comments we have Chad says that it's like swamp gas catching light from Venus.
Right.
Sure it is.
Yeah.
Sure it is.
Oh, I'm not gonna lie. There's one coming up that's.
Oh.
You'll hear what explanation the Air Force gave for that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Ball lightning again.
Yeah.
And something along the line. Well, the Gorman dogfight became one of the most compelling cases for Project Sign. It was exactly the type of encounter the program sought to analyze. One with credible witnesses, radar confirmation, and behavior that defied explanation. For the investigators at Sign, this was another piece of evidence that hinted at a possibility too extraordinary to ignore. That some of these objects might not be of earthly origin. Now, as Project Sign investigators pored over reports of unidentified flying objects in 1948, a pattern began to emerge. The cases they found the most credible shared those remarkable similarities: objects moving at impossible speeds, executing maneuvers beyond human engineering, and showing signs of intelligent control. These weren't just fleeting glimpses or isolated accounts. They were detailed observations from trained pilots, radar operators, and other reliable witnesses. But by the end of the year, Project Sign analysts decided they had enough evidence to draw a conclusion. So they compiled their findings into a document that would later become one of the most controversial in UFO history, called the Estimate of the Situation, which that sounds like I don't know. Anyways,
what, they contact insurance brokers?
That's a document you like clear off you're muted, Shelley. You clear off the entire table. Yeah, slam down the estimate of the situation. This is it, guys. But the estimate was straightforward in its purpose. It reviewed the strongest UFO cases investigated by Sign, like the Gorman dogfight, and other incidents involving military personnel and radar confirmation. The investigators meticulously outlined the characteristics of the sightings, ruling out known aircraft, weather phenomena, or hoaxes. But what set the estimate apart was its conclusion. After analyzing the data, the team posited a bold hypothesis. Some of these objects might be extraterrestrial in origin. Well, the document didn't make this claim lightly. It was rooted in evidence, speed and agility that defied the capabilities of any human-made technology, consistent witness reports, and the absence of any plausible terrestrial explanation.
Right.
But the estimate was short-lived. When the estimate was sent to higher-ranking officials, including Air Force Chief of Staff General Hoyt Vandenberg, it caused an immediate stir. For the analysts at Project Sign, the extraterrestrial hypothesis seemed like the only logical answer. But for those in position of power, the conclusion was too extraordinary and too risky to accept without irrefutable proof. General Vandenberg rejected the document outright, citing insufficient evidence to support such a claim. The estimate was dismissed, and most copies were reportedly destroyed. I'm sure that, quote, all of them were destroyed.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yes, the government always destroys all of everything.
Oh, all of them. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, or they're lost. Well, we lost them.
Yeah. Yeah. But what could have been a groundbreaking moment in UFO history was buried, leaving only whispers and recollections from those who had seen it. Yet the estimate of the situation didn't disappear entirely. The rejection of the estimate marked a turning point in the government's approach to UFO phenomena. For a brief moment, Project Sign represented that genuine effort to understand what was happening in the skies, a program unafraid to entertain extraordinary conclusions when the evidence pointed that way. But that openness didn't last either. The dismissal of the estimate sent a clear message. Conclusions that veered too far into the unknown wouldn't be tolerated, especially without absolute proof. The extraterrestrial hypothesis was effectively shelved, and with it, the ambitious spirit that had driven Project Sign. For many, Project Sign's ultimate failure wasn't in its findings, but in its timing. The Cold War had just begun, and the military's priorities leaned heavily towards earthly threats. The idea of confronting something extraterrestrial, something that could challenge not just national security, but humanity's place in the universe, was simply too much. Project Sign's brief existence serves as a reminder of what happens when evidence collides with fear. And by 1949, Project Sign was dismantled, and in its place came Project Grudge. When Project Sign was dismantled in 1949, its replacement, Project Grudge, took a markedly different approach. If Sign had been a genuine attempt to understand UFOs, Grudge was the bureaucratic answer to a growing public relations problem. Its purpose was clear: shift the focus from investigation to dismissal, and put to rest the idea that unidentified flying objects might be extraterrestrial in origin. Unlike its predecessor, Project Grudge wasn't designed to analyze UFO sightings with an open mind. Its primary goal was to explain away reports and, in doing so, calm public fears. The extraterrestrial hypothesis, once seriously considered under Sign, was now off the table.
It was denied.
Yep, it was completely denied.
The aptly named Project Grudge.
Exactly. Well, investigators under Grudge attributed UFO sightings to mundane causes: weather phenomena, misidentified aircraft, and optical illusions. In cases where no explanation could be found, the phenomenon was often dismissed as a hoax or the product of overactive imaginations. That's always my favorite. It's just your overactive imagination.
It's like, yes, but me and 5 other people saw it at the same time.
No shit.
And 6 other people in the county over, and another 20 at this gathering in a town.
But I guess we all imagine the massive craft that went over everybody, sure.
That's pretty cool. Exactly. I kind of like the idea of a collective imagination going on. Boy, we get some freaky shit going up in there, couldn't we?
Yeah. Well, while this approach provided convenient answers, it did little to address the credibility of many witnesses, including military personnel and trained pilots. On January 7th, 1948, Captain Thomas Mantell, a highly experienced pilot and World War II veteran, was flying a routine mission in his aircraft near Godman Army Airfield in Kentucky. What began as an ordinary day soon turned into one of the most mysterious and unfortunately tragic events in UFO history. Around 1:30 p.m., reports started flooding into Godman Army Airfield about a strange object in the sky. Witnesses described a massive, bright, circular object hovering at a high altitude. Observers at the base confirmed the sighting, noting that the object appeared stationary at first, then began to move slowly. Mantell and 3 other pilots were on a nearby training mission when they received orders to investigate. As Mantell climbed toward the object, his wingmen reported seeing a bright light ahead, but they eventually broke off the chase due to low oxygen and high altitudes. Mantell, however, continued upward. As he climbed higher, he described the object as large and metallic, possibly 300 feet in diameter.
Damn.
And his final transmission was chilling. Quote, "It appears to be metallic and of tremendous size. I'm going to 20,000 feet, and if I'm no closer, I'll abandon chase," end quote. Moments later, Mantell's aircraft spiraled out of control, and it crashed near Franklin, Kentucky, killing him instantly. The Air Force... Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, didn't his plane engine actually stall on that? Because I think the other reason the other pilots turned back were because they were getting the warning lights that they were climbing too high, and that there was a chance of a stall. I might be misremembering. If I'm wrong, somebody put that in the comments. But
I looked through this case and I wasn't able to find. The only thing I was able to find was that he climbed to, or said he was going to climb that high, and then the next thing that happened was that his aircraft came spiraling out. Okay. So I'm assuming it probably stalled.
Yeah.
But the fact is, there's this object
that could have jammed his radar, jammed his systems, and
could have knocked him out. That caused him to nosedive too. And we don't know what happened.
Somebody in our Chad, who is a pilot, said that would be a compression stall if it's altitude related. So it could have been. I don't recall in this case. So my apologies. I'll go look into it and find it. And I'll let you guys know at some point. But I don't remember if it was something that was actually magnetic, or if it was emitting something that jammed everything up, that made everything just stop.
Yeah. Well, the Air Force initially speculated that Mantell had been chasing the planet Venus. visible in the sky that afternoon.
Yes, good old giant metallic Venus at 20,000 feet.
And it runs, apparently.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Well, this explanation was widely criticized as Venus would not appear as a large metallic object, as Ryan had just said. Later, the Air Force concluded that Mantell had likely pursued a high-altitude skyhook weather balloon, part of another classified program. Critics of the skyhook... Go ahead, Ryan.
They don't move like that, for the love of God. Do you
And
not
are they
think this is
300
a
feet?
decorated World War II pilot? He's seen a fucking weather balloon. He knows what a weather balloon looks like, and that ain't it.
Yeah, and this was in 1948. So this man is not far out of War, being in within battle at World War II. So, but I'm sorry, critics of the skyhook weather balloon explanation pointed out inconsistencies. Mantell was an experienced pilot, familiar with weather balloons, and his descriptions didn't match a balloon's characteristics. Furthermore, his sudden crash raised questions about what had caused him to lose control of his aircraft. Some speculated that Mantell had encountered something far beyond human technology, something that cost him his life. Well, the Mantell incident became one of the first cases to highlight the dangers of pursuing UFOs and the government's tendency to dismiss credible reports with questionable explanations. For Project Sign, the case underscored the need for serious investigation. Under Grudge, however, the Air Force's final explanation felt like an attempt to put the matter to rest, even if key details remained unresolved. While convenient for public perception, this frustrated those who sought genuine answers. Project Grudge...
I'm sorry. I was going to say that Chad put in the comments that a stall due to the aircraft girdle, a stall from that height is absolutely recoverable. And that the other thing, all the military jets in that time period, they had service ceilings of well over 40,000 feet.
Oh, okay.
So thank you, Chad. He obviously wasn't too high for that aircraft to recover.
Right.
So thank you, Chad.
Go
Appreciate
up to 20,000. Yeah. So. Well, Project Grudge also marked a significant shift in how the Air Force handled the UFO phenomenon publicly. Official statements under Grudge minimized the seriousness of UFO sightings, aiming to curb the media frenzy that followed cases like Roswell and the Gorman dogfight. At the same time, Grudge emphasized the idea that UFO witnesses were unreliable. Witnesses were often portrayed as mistaken or even delusional, adding a stigma to UFO reporting that discouraged others from coming forward. This public relations strategy created more skepticism about the government's transparency and further strained trust between the public and the military. Well, Project Grudge didn't last long. It was terminated in 1951, less than 2 years after it began, but its impact lingered. By focusing on debunking rather than investigating, Grudge set a precedent for how the government would handle UFO phenomena for decades to come. The dismissive tone of Grudge alienated not only the public, but also military personnel who felt their experiences weren't being taken seriously. Credible witnesses were left with unresolved questions, and the program's insistence on mundane explanations often rang hollow. Still, the reports gathered under Grudge served as a foundation for its successor, Project Blue Book, which I'm sure many of our listeners have heard about.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Well, Grudge may have silenced the conversation for a time, but it couldn't erase the growing mountain of sightings and reports that defied explanation. As public interest surged once again in the early 1950s, the Air Force was forced to rethink its approach. Enter Project Blue Book, a program that would tackle the UFO phenomenon on an unprecedented scale, but one that inherited the same contradictions as its predecessors. By the early 1950s, reports of UFO sightings had skyrocketed. Stories of strange lights and objects in the sky filled newspapers, and the public was eager for answers. In response, the U.S. Air Force launched Project Blue Book in 1952. This program became the most extensive and longest-running government investigation into UFOs, shaping how the world viewed the phenomenon. Project Blue Book was designed to do three main things. 1, investigate UFO sightings and figure out what people were seeing. 2, decide if these objects posed a threat to national security. And 3, unofficially, calm public fears about UFOs. While the mission seemed straightforward, there was tension in how it was carried out. Some investigators, like the program's first director, Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, wanted to approach the phenomenon scientifically. Ruppelt even created the term, quote, UFO to replace the more sensationalized flying saucer. He believed a neutral term would help bring credibility to the study of these unexplained sightings. But others saw Project Blue Book as a way to reassure the public and explain away sightings as something ordinary. This conflict between genuine investigation and public relations defined much of the program. And one of the most famous cases Project Blue Book investigated was the Lubbock Lights in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
In August 1951, a group of college professors saw a formation of glowing bluish white lights fly overhead.
Mm-hmm.
The lights moved in a V-shaped pattern, silent but incredibly fast.
Right.
Over the next few weeks, dozens of others in Lubbock reported seeing the same thing. Some even took photographs, which added credibility to the sightings. Blue Book took the case seriously, interviewing witnesses and analyzing the photos. Some skeptics suggested the lights were migratory birds reflecting city lights. Right. Bullshit.
Yeah.
But that explanation didn't match what witnesses described, especially the speed and precision of the formations. And to this day, no one has been able to explain the Lubbock Lights, making it one of Project Blue Book's most intriguing unsolved cases. Well, over 12,000 sightings were investigated during Project Blue Book's 17-year operation. While most were explained as weather balloons, aircraft, or natural phenomena, 701 cases out of 12,618 remain unsolved.
Mm-hmm.
These reports often came from credible witnesses like pilots and radar operators and involved physical evidence that couldn't be dismissed.
Right.
These unresolved cases raise a simple but powerful question. If these sightings weren't hoaxes or mistakes, then what were they? For many, the lack of answers only deepened the mystery. Go ahead, Ryan.
I say it was enough to make a believer out of J. Allen Hynek, because when he first gets in, he thinks that this is all a bunch of bullshit. And he's actually the one that came up with the swamp gas explanation that he regretted that for years afterwards. Like, I'm so stupid. Why'd I say that? Because, it
he
became
contributed to the conspiracy theory. Right.
It became the de facto explanation,
I feel like such a good alien person because I mentioned him later on.
Right. So, and he
I'm learning.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry,
and by the end, he was a believer. He was like,
there
are some things that I absolutely cannot explain here. And there are some, obviously people are experiencing something because he investigated pretty much anything famous you want to think about from that time period. And at the end, there were things he just could not explain. And he became a believer and took that later on in life and pursued the UFO phenomenon from that standpoint versus when he first got into Blue Book.
Yeah. Well, in the late 1960s, the Air Force faced growing criticism about Project Blue Book. To address this, they asked physicist Edward Condon and his team at the University of Colorado to review the program's findings. Yes, I'm going to touch on this for just a second.
Edward Condon, fuck that guy.
Yeah, no. Well, the team's report, published in 1969, concluded that UFOs didn't pose a threat to national security and weren't scientifically important.
Mm-hmm.
This led to the closure of Project Blue Book later that year. But the report wasn't without controversy. Many accused the team of ignoring key evidence and dismissing credible cases too quickly. Critics felt the report was more about shutting down the conversation than solving the mystery. Of course it was. But even though Project Blue Book ended, its influence didn't. It brought UFOs into the spotlight, making them a mainstream topic in pop culture. Movies, books, and TV shows about extraterrestrials exploded in popularity during Blue Book's run. At the same time, At the same time, the program's tendency to dismiss reports left the public skeptical of government transparency. For many, the unexplained cases and the abrupt closure of Blue Book felt like a proof that there was more to the story. Decades later, Project Blue Book's work is still relevant. Its case files remain a valuable resource for researchers, and its unresolved sightings continue to spark interest. Recent programs, like the Pentagon's UAP Task Force, often reference Blue Book as a foundation for modern investigations. It's clear the questions Blue Book left behind are far from settled. The question it left unanswered continue to haunt both researchers and the public. And as we move into more of the modern age of UFO investigations, we must ask, how much of the truth has been hidden and how much is still waiting to be uncovered?
All of it?
All of it, yeah.
On both fronts.
Yeah.
Well, when Project Blue Book ended in 1969, the U.S. Air Force made its position on UFOs clear. There was no evidence that unidentified flying objects posed a threat to national security or represented extraterrestrial life. The official line was simple. There was nothing left to investigate. But the public didn't see it that way. For almost 2 decades, Blue Book had been the government's most visible effort to address the UFO phenomenon. But its sudden closure, paired with the lingering questions it left unanswered, felt suspicious to many. Why end the program if UFOs were such a persistent topic of public interest? The lack of transparency fueled speculation. Skeptics saw Blue Book's closure.
Chad Blondell said, just
I thought.
the tip. That's all you get is just the tip. Get out of here, Chad.
Well, skeptics saw Blue Book's closure as an attempt to bury the issue, while believers took it as evidence that the government was hiding something significant. The perception of a cover-up gained traction, particularly as reports of UFO sightings didn't stop. They continued to pour in, now with no apparent official channel to investigate them. But into this void stepped civilian researchers and organizations.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most influential was the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON, founded in 1969. MUFON and similar groups dedicated themselves to investigating sightings, collecting data, and advocating for transparency. Unlike government programs, these organizations openly encouraged public participation, creating a grassroots movement to uncover the truth about UFOs. For many, these civilian efforts were a response to what they saw as government failure or outright refusal to address the phenomenon honestly. Researchers and enthusiasts began to build a network of witnesses, evidence, and case files that rivaled the data once collected by the Air Force. This shift also brought new voices into the conversation. Journalists, authors, and filmmakers started exploring UFOs with a critical lens, often pointing out inconsistencies in the government's public statements. These civilian investigations played a key role in keeping the phenomenon in the public eye, even as the government seemed to retreat into silence. The 1970s and the 1980s were already a time of growing distrust in the government. Scandals like Watergate, the revelation of the Pentagon Papers, and increased transparency through the Freedom of Information Act showed the public that the government, shocker, wasn't always honest.
You don't say.
You don't say. Well, it's against this backdrop, the sudden closure of Project Blue Book felt like less like the end of the investigation, more like the start of a cover-up. The release of declassified documents through FOIA requests added fuel to the fire. These records reveal that military personnel have reported strange, unexplained objects even after Blue Book's closure. Some reports included radar confirmation showing that sightings weren't just visual anomalies. These revelations contradicted the Air Force's assertion that UFOs were of no interest, further eroding public trust. Former skeptics like J. Allen Hynek, who had worked for Project Blue Book, became vocal proponents of serious UFO research. Hynek's close encounter classification system, introduced in his book, The UFO Experience, A Scientific Inquiry in 1972, gave the phenomenon a framework that resonated with both researchers and the public. Popular culture also played a key role in bridging the divide. Movies like Close Encounter of the Third Kind, 1977, and TV shows like In Search Of brought UFOs into the mainstream, blending entertainment with genuine curiosity. These portrayals made UFOs more relatable and less taboo, pushing them into public consciousness in a way that government silence couldn't erase. Meanwhile, rumors about government secrecy, centered on places like Area 51, began to gain traction. I know, Shelley's thought. Shelley's ear just went up.
Me in Area 51. Like I said, I knew somebody who actually used to work at Area 51, and he wouldn't tell me shit about it. I tried and tried. I offered that man damn near anything he wanted. If he would just tell me about Area 51, he said, I can't.
It wasn't Bob Lazar, was it?
No, it was not.
Okay.
The man has since passed on. He was a very sweet gentleman, but yeah.
Oh, darn.
Well, those stories began to gain traction, or those rumors began to gain traction. Stories of reverse engineered alien technology, secret programs like Project Aquarius, and alleged UFO crashes captured the imagination of the public that was increasingly skeptical of official narratives. The lack of transparency allowed alternative theories to flourish, from plausible scenarios to more fantastical ideas about the interdimensional beings or ancient alien connections. The 1970s and 1980s became a pivotal era for the UFO phenomenon. With the government maintaining its silence, the public turned to these civilian investigators, popular media, and their own imaginations to fill the gap. UFOs were no longer a fringe topic. They had become a culture and scientific puzzle that demanded answers. One such encounter that demanded answers involved a military helicopter. This one I like. I'm sorry. I love this story.
Okay.
One such encounter that demanded answers involved a military helicopter crew in the skies over Ohio, and it would challenge even the staunchest skeptics. On the night of October 18th, 1973, in Mansfield, Ohio, a routine military training flight turned into one of the most chilling UFO encounters ever recorded. Captain Lawrence Coyne and his crew, Sergeant John Healy, I'm going to butcher a couple of these names and I apologize, I'll try my best, and his crew, Sergeant John Healy, Sergeant Arrigo Jezzi, and Private First Class Robert Yannicksek, I think I got that right, were flying a UH-1H Huey helicopter on a clear moonlit evening. As they traveled at an altitude of about 2,500 feet heading south, a strange red light appeared in the distance. At first, the crew thought it might be a plane, but the light began moving toward them at incredible speed. Within moments, it became clear that this was no ordinary craft. The red light closed in fast, descending toward the helicopter in a trajectory that suggested a collision was imminent. Coyne and his crew prepared for impact, but just before it seemed inevitable, the light stopped midair, hovering directly in front of them. It was then that they saw it clearly. A gray, cigar-shaped craft approximately 60 feet long with a domed top. A bright green beam of light shot out from the craft, engulfing the helicopter. To the crew's shock, the helicopter's altitude began to climb rapidly without any input from Coyne. The craft seemed to pull the helicopter upward, lifting it to over 3,500 feet before the beam disappeared. As suddenly as the craft had appeared, the object darted away into the night, moving at a speed no known aircraft could match. The crew was left shaken, but unharmed. They immediately checked their instruments and found no damage to the helicopter, though they couldn't explain how the altitude had changed so dramatically. The crew also noted that radio communications with the ground had been disrupted during the encounter, only resuming after the craft had disappeared. What made the Coyne incident particularly compelling was the corroboration from witnesses on the ground. Residents in the Mansfield area reported seeing a bright red light and a green beam in the sky at the same time as the helicopter's encounter. Their descriptions matched with what the crews reported.
There is a episode of, I believe it's Destination Truth. It's one of Josh Gates' shows where he actually is in a helicopter, and they show just how impossible it was for that helicopter, to go as high as it did, as fast as it did. It's virtually impossible. There is no way on God's green earth, unless it was caught in some sort of tractor beam and being pulled that way.
Yeah, I actually
there's absolutely no way.
It's very good, and I can't think of the name of it. I think it's in one of the Destination Alien Destination Truth. You're right, but those are the Alien episodes. So yeah,
yeah,
find that one. It's interesting.
Love this story.
Yeah.
Well, the Coyne helicopter incident remains one of the most credible UFO cases ever documented. The witnesses were highly trained military personnel. The encounter was observed from multiple perspectives, and the physical effects on the helicopter's altitude and radio signals were measurable. Unlike many UFO sightings, this case left no room for easy explanations. Weather balloons don't emit green beams or alter flight paths.
Nope.
Known aircraft couldn't perform the maneuvers witnessed that night. The Coyne helicopter incident wasn't just a chilling encounter, it symbolized the lingering questions left unanswered by Project Blue Book's closure. But the 1970s and the 1980s were only the beginning. By the 1990s, UFOs were back in the public spotlight. Although the government had officially distanced itself from UFO investigations, the phenomenon refused to fade. It's almost like if we just retreat and go away and don't mention it, it's just going to go away.
Yeah,
it seems to what the government's stance is right at this point, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s at least. Well, a combination of cultural shows, newly declassified documents, and major sightings reignited public interest and pushed UFOs into mainstream conversation. This period marked a significant turning point again, as the topic evolved from that fringe curiosity to a question of government transparency and scientific inquiry.
Thank you, Coast to Coast AM and Art Bell.
Loved Art Bell. Loved Art Bell.
Well, I'm going to talk about one of Shelley's favorite things, because the 1990s saw a resurgence of UFOs in pop culture. Television shows like The X-Files captured wide...
I'm here for it. I want to believe. I love that show. Do you know what? I watched that show so much that when my son was born, an episode of The X-Files came on, and he is like less than 3 hours old, and he opened his eyes and he looked around. That's how much I watched X-Files. My infant newborn child recognized the tune. Yeah, I had an issue, I had a problem. It's fine.
Well, television shows like The X-Files captured widespread anxieties about government secrecy and the unknown. Week after week, audiences followed the fictional investigations of FBI agents Mulder and Scully, blending real-world UFO lore with compelling storytelling. Books like Whitley Strieber's Communion in 1987 also left a lasting impression, exploring the topic of alien abduction. Strieber's personal account of his encounters with, quote, visitors became a bestseller, sparking debates about the reality of extraterrestrial contact. For many, these narratives made UFOs more relatable, bridging the gap between scientific possibility and human experience. UFOs were no longer just objects in the sky. They became symbols of deeper questions about humanity's place in the universe and whether the government could be trusted to reveal the truth. During this time, the
I
freedom
don't
of
think so.
yeah. Well, during this time, the Freedom of Information Act, which was passed in 1967, became a crucial tool for UFO researchers by the 1990s. As public interest surged, journalists and civilian investigators filed requests to uncover government documents related to UFO sightings. These efforts unearthed a wealth of previously classified material, revealing that even after the closure of Project Blue Book, the government continued to monitor unexplained aerial phenomena. One notable document was a 1976 memo about the Tehran UFO incident, where Iranian fighter pilots attempted to intercept a glowing object that jammed their instruments and demonstrated capabilities beyond any known aircraft. Other declassified files revealed military personnel's accounts of radar-confirmed sightings and objects that appeared to defy physics. However, these documents often came heavily redacted, with large portions blacked out. While the content was intriguing, the censorship fueled speculation. If UFOs posed no threat and had no extraterrestrial origins, why were so many details obscured? These disclosures didn't confirm alien life, but they reignited suspicion that the government was withholding critical information. The release of these files also validated the persistence of UFO researchers, showing that the phenomenon was taken more seriously behind closed doors than officials had publicly admitted. Now, during the 1990s, on March 13th, 1997, thousands of people across Arizona witnessed what is now known as the Phoenix Lights.
Yep.
The sightings began around 7:30 p.m., with reports of a large V-shaped craft with bright lights moving silently across the sky. By 8:30 p.m., the craft had been seen over Phoenix and surrounding areas, leaving witnesses in awe and confusion. The descriptions were strikingly consistent. An enormous object, dark enough to block out the stars, moving slowly and silently. Some witnesses estimated its size to be over a mile wide, dwarfing any known aircraft. Among those who reported seeing the craft was Arizona Governor Fife Symington, who later described it as, quote, otherworldly. The Air Force later claimed that the lights were flares dropped during a military exercise, but this explanation didn't align with the craft's reported shape and behavior. What are you saying, Ryan?
Say old Fife had to double back and come back out and say that later on after he marched that dude out in an alien suit and said, "We got the culprits." But then he comes out later on and is like, "Hey, I had to do that." I remember
that press conference. I was actually living in Las Vegas at that time. And I remember this just being all over the news, and everybody was like, "What is this?" Everybody's freaking out. And at one point, I know, because I lived in Vegas, that there was a rumor that they came from Area 51, that's where they were launched from. Now, does that have any validity? Who knows? No. It was a Vegas rumor, so who knows? But that was something that was actually being floated around in the town of Las Vegas when I lived there. So,
Well, the flare explanation didn't align with the craft's reported shape or behavior. The silence of the object, its sheer size, and the coordination of its lights challenged conventional explanation. The Phoenix Lights became a turning point in the modern UFO history. It was one of the most widely witnessed and documented sightings in history, illustrating the gap between official accounts and public experiences. For many, it symbolized the ongoing disconnect between what people saw and what they were told to believe. And the push for government transparency around UFOs reached new heights in May of 2001 with the Disclosure Project led by Dr. Stephen Greer. At a press conference held at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., over 20 former military personnel, government officials, and aviation experts shared their testimonies about encounters with UFOs. One witness, a former FAA official, recounted how radar operators observed a massive UFO hovering near Anchorage, Alaska in 1986. Another, a retired military officer, described recovering a downed craft with capabilities far beyond human engineering. Shelley, you went sideways. Witnesses claim
I'll be right back.
Okay. Witnesses claim that technologies derived from these encounters have been suppressed, citing a pattern of secrecy dating back decades. And the Disclosure Project called for congressional hearings to address these claims and for the release of suppressed technologies that could benefit humanity. While the event didn't lead to immediate government action, it was a landmark moment. The credibility of the witnesses, many of whom held high security clearances, challenged the stigma surrounding UFOs and pushed the conversation back into the mainstream. Well, in 2007, the Pentagon quietly, the keyword, established the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or Ryan.
ATIP.
There you go.
Yeah.
Which was tasked with investigating reports of unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs. Well, led by intelligence officer Luis Elizondo, the program, ATIP, focused on encounters involving military personnel and advanced unexplained technologies. Now, the existence of ATIP was largely unknown until about 2017, when a groundbreaking New York Times article revealed its operations. The report included declassified footage of UAP encounters, such as the now famous Tic Tac video, in which Navy pilots captured fast-moving objects performing maneuvers that defied known aeronautical capabilities. The revelations surrounding ATIP marked a turning point. Again, for decades, the government had dismissed UFOs as irrelevant or easily explainable. Now, it was clear that the military was taking these encounters seriously, even if they weren't ready to share all the details.
And I believe it was Senator Harry Reid that came forward and revealed if I'm not mistaken, I believe he revealed the existence of ATIP, or he was coming forward because he was about to die from cancer, and he was coming out and saying,
he said something about it. Was he the original source to reveal that?
I think you plug back in.
Of course.
Yeah.
I think so. I think he was. I could be wrong on that, but if I'm not mistaken, he was one of the ones that kind of blew the cover off of all of it. He blew the whistle on all that, if I'm not mistaken.
Well,
if it wasn't ATIP specifically, he was the one that came forward and said during the Obama administration there was a lot of black money that was moving around for dark projects, black ops projects, and some of that went to the study of UAPs.
And a lot of that was kind of, the kind of when all the whistleblowing kind of began, where people were not as afraid to step out and speak. So yeah, I don't recall if he's actually the first one, but he was definitely one of the people to reveal. Right. Start spilling secrets.
One of
the most prominent voices, because I mean, this dude is like high-ranking senator. This guy knows what he's talking about.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, ATIP's work laid the foundation for modern disclosure efforts. Its findings highlighted the potential security risk of UAPs and underscored the need for further investigation. The program's exposure also reignited public interest in UFOs, proving that the phenomenon wasn't just a relic of the past. It was an ongoing mystery. And what followed was a wave of modern disclosure efforts, bringing UFOs, now called UAPs, into the realm of mainstream investigation and policy. By the late 2010s, decades of speculation and frustration were beginning to yield some results. What had once been a taboo topic, relegated to late-night talk shows and fringe documentaries, was now creeping into that mainstream conversation. A series of revelations and acknowledgments would bring UFOs or UAPs into the realm of serious inquiry, forcing governments, scientists, and the public to confront a question that has lingered for decades. What the fuck is flying in our skies, and what are they hiding from us? Sorry, I had to put that little emphasis in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Well, in 2020, the Pentagon announced the creation of the UAP Task Force, a program dedicated to studying unexplained aerial encounters. For many, this announcement was long overdue.
Yeah.
We're talking from Kenneth Arnold was 1947, but there are some, I will mention that with the Foo Fighter in the
Foo Fighters in the 1940s.
Yeah, in the 1940s, before Kenneth Arnold. Kenneth Arnold was one that just kind of seemed to bust open the floodgates with the media frenzy and stuff like that. That's why I started with them.
Right, but you had the Foo Fighters during World War II that were following both Allied and Axis planes, and they thought they were one or the other. Like the Allies thought it was the Axis thought it was the Allies. They couldn't figure out who it was. So
we're talking from then until 2020. Go figure, that long. But anyways. What is that, like 70? Yeah.
70 years?
70, 80 years. Yeah. So for many, this announcement was long overdue. High-profile military sightings, such as the Tic Tac video, had exposed an undeniable truth. Highly trained personnel were encountering objects with capabilities far beyond our known technology. Unlike past efforts like Project Blue Book or even the most recent ATIP, the UAP Task Force operated with a promise of transparency. Lawmakers like Senator Marco Rubio called for regular reports to Congress, emphasizing the need to understand whether these objects posed a threat to national security. Yet, this openness came with limitations. Shocker. The program's scope was deliberately narrow. focusing primarily on recent military encounters. Civilian data reports, historical data. God, I should have rewritten that sentence. Civilian data report and historical data were largely excluded, leaving out some of the most compelling accounts. Moreover, the rebranding from UFOs to UAPs wasn't just a technical shift. It was a calculated effort to remove the stigma associated with the phenomena, framing it instead as an issue of aerospace and defense.
Dude, but if it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. It's a duck. You can call it a goose. You can call it a whatever the hell you want to call it. We know what we're talking about here.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There are parameters we must operate within in order to tell the truth, right? There are rules to telling the truth.
Yeah.
Exactly. There are. Well, behind the scenes, frustration simmered. Military personnel, including Navy pilots, spoke openly about their encounters, often expressing concern that their reports were being ignored or downplayed. The UAP task force represented progress, but it also highlighted just how tightly the narrative was still being controlled. Well, the public's anticipation reached a fever pitch in June 2021, when the Pentagon released its preliminary assessment on UAPs. The 9-page report analyzed 144 UAP incidents reported between 2004 and 2021, offering the first official acknowledgement that many of these objects defied explanation. Among the most striking findings were accounts of objects demonstrating advanced capabilities, rapid acceleration, abrupt changes in direction, and hovering without visible propulsion. Mm-hmm. These were not characteristics of drones, balloons, or any known aircraft. However, the report stopped short of offering definitive answers. While it categorized UAPs into broad groups like, quote, airborne clutter and natural atmospheric phenomena, the most intriguing cases, those involving advanced capabilities, remained unexplained. Of the 144 incidents, only one was definitively identified as a balloon. Adding to the frustration was the report's classified annex, which was not released to the public. This section, many speculated, contained the most compelling evidence: radar data, technical analysis, perhaps even evidence of recovered materials. Its omission only deepened suspicions that the government was withholding crucial information. While the report marked a turning point in transparency, it also exemplified the paradox of modern disclosure, offering just enough to validate the phenomenon, but withholding enough to keep the full truth out of reach. Go ahead, Aaron.
And that is so unbelievably frustrating. Like we've talked about before on the pre-broadcast and post-broadcast, they will step right up to the line and say, we don't know what's happening. We don't know where they're coming from. It's not foreign. We don't know what it is. And then they'll walk it back 2 steps.
Yep.
And they'll be like, but we're not saying that it's aliens. We're not saying it's extraterrestrial, but we don't know what it is. Exactly. And then they'll walk it right back up to the line and walk it back 2 steps. And 2, what you were talking about, them withholding things from the public. If you've watched any of these disclosure hearings in Congress, you've had so many whistleblowers go before Congress talking about what they know and what they've seen. And certain congressmen will ask them certain questions, and they're like, I can't tell you in an open session. When we go behind closed doors, then I can talk to you about it. So there is just enough that's coming out, and it's almost, and forgive me if I'm jumping your story, let me know if I am, but it's almost like we're being conditioned at how much can we tell them before they start freaking out. Do you know what I mean?
I'll touch on that here in just a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, in 2022, NASA entered the UAP conversation, marking a significant moment in the scientific legitimization of the phenomenon. For decades, UFOs had been dismissed as pseudoscience, but NASA's involvement reframed the conversation, treating UAPs as an unexplored scientific mystery. Now, the space agency announced plans to analyze existing data, develop new detection methods, and collaborate with other agencies, including the Pentagon. This global approach emphasized that UAPs were not just an American concern, they were a worldwide phenomenon. However, NASA's study came with its own limitations. Much of its analysis depended on data provided by the military, raising questions about how much access the agency truly had. Moreover, NASA avoided engaging in the extraterrestrial hypothesis, framing UAPs as potential atmospheric or astronomical phenomena instead. For some, NASA's involvement was a step forward. For others, it felt like another carefully managed narrative, designed to explore the phenomenon without addressing its most controversial implications. As the government took cautious steps towards disclosure, the public and media picked up the torch. Social media platforms like Twitter and Reddit became hubs for UAP enthusiasts, where every new video or report was dissected and analyzed by millions. Platforms like YouTube hosted endless debates, and independent researchers gained massive followings as they sought to uncover what the government wouldn't share. This shift from skepticism to serious journalism reflected a broader cultural change. UAPs were now no longer fringe science. They were a matter of public interest and national security. Figures like Luis Elizondo, the former head of ATIP, and organizations like To the Stars Academy became prominent voices in the disclosure movement. These groups pushed for transparency and conducted their own research, often filling gaps left by government reluctance. Rumors of advanced technology also persisted. Some speculated that UAP studies were tied to classified research into anti-gravity propulsion or strength technology. These theories, while unproven, underscore the enduring suspicion that the government's interest in UAPs extend far beyond what it is willing to admit publicly. The modern wave of disclosure efforts has transformed how UAPs are perceived. No longer relegated to the realm of conspiracy theories, they are now topics of serious inquiry for lawmakers, scientists, and journalists. Yet the lingering secrecy, the classified annexes, the unanswered questions, the controlled narratives, has ensured that the mystery endures. As we've explored in depth, the UFO phenomenon is more than a collection of strange lights in the sky or unexplained encounters. It is a narrative spanning decades, intertwined with government secrecy, societal curiosity, and scientific inquiry. From the first moments of Kenneth Arnold's sighting in the Roswell incident to the government's systematic investigations under Sign, Grudge, and Blue Book, one thing emerges consistently. We are witnessing something we do not fully understand. For over 70 years, UAPs have forced us to confront questions that challenge our perception of reality. While the government has consistently maintained a position of skepticism or outright dismissal, their actions, investigative programs, classified documents, and recently modern task forces tell a different story. They are watching, they are analyzing, they're also withholding. When the U.S. Air Force ended Project Blue Book in 1969, it declared the phenomenon scientifically insignificant and no threat to national security. But the conclusion didn't line with the evidence. Cases left unexplained, reports that defied conventional understanding, and testimony from highly credible witnesses, including military personnel. The silence that followed only deepened that public suspicion. Civilian organizations like MUFON had emerged, stepping in to investigate where the government seemingly had abandoned its role. The cultural divide widened, with UFOs dismissed by officials yet immortalized in popular media as symbols of mystery and intrigue. By the late 1990s, the phenomenon gained new momentum. Even the events like the Phoenix Lights reawakened public interest, while declassified files obtained through the Freedom of Information Act revealed the extent of past government involvement. Remember, during their silence, they're like, no, we're not doing anything. There's no programs. No. And then you get FOIA requests that reveal, oh, yeah, by the way, we were looking into that the whole fucking time. Programs like ATIP demonstrated that far from ignoring UAPs, the government was continuing to investigate them under different guises. And in the past decade, we've seen unprecedented steps towards acknowledgement. The Pentagon's UAP Task Force, the release of the 2021 Pentagon Report, and NASA's UAP study have reframed the conversation, shifting the focus from ridicule to legitimacy. These efforts have brought UAPs into the mainstream, no longer dismissed as mere folklore, but treated as a phenomenon worthy of serious investigation. Yet, even with these advancements, the core questions remain unsolved. What the fuck are these objects? Where the fuck did they come from? And perhaps the most troubling, what the fuck does the government truly know about them? Sorry,
and maybe
I heard
even
that if
what
you...
the fuck do they want?
That's a big one too, right there.
They definitely aren't coming out here seeking out our big brains. That's
And if they wanted to hurt us, they already would have. So what do they want?
Yeah.
Let's finish your conclusion. I'm ready to talk to you about this stuff.
For every revelation, there seems to be an equal measure of withholding. The classified annexes of recent reports, the careful language used in public statements, and the limited scopes of investigations all suggest that what we're seeing is just the tip of the iceberg. This selective transparency creates as much frustration as it does fascination, leaving us to wonder how much more lies hidden in the shadows. From the 1940s to the present, one fact is clear: UAPs are real. They're being seen by credible witnesses, tracked by advanced radar systems, and studied at the highest levels of government. They defy our understanding of physics, technology, and perhaps even our place in the universe. But acknowledging their existence is not the same as understanding their nature.
Right.
Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or something else entirely? Do they represent a threat, an opportunity, or merely a mystery? These are the questions that remain unanswered despite decades of inquiry. What we do know is that this phenomenon has profound implications. It challenges our understanding of science and technology. It forces us to reconsider long-held beliefs about humanity's dominance and security. And it raises existential questions about who we are and what role we play in the universe that may be far more populated than we ever imagined.
Mm-hmm.
Each step brings us closer to understanding, yet the full picture remains elusive. The government's slow trickle of information keeps us engaged, but leaves us yearning for more. So before we get into the discussion part of this episode, I ask you, what do you believe? Are UAPs merely misidentified natural phenomena, or do they point to something far greater? What does disclosure mean to you, and how might it reshape our understanding of the world?
Are we ready?
Yeah.
Those are your questions. Go for it.
Go ahead, Ryan. You look like you're ready.
Well, what I was going to say is, you know, what they're doing with what disclosure means to me. It means fucking come out and tell me what the hell is going on. Don't sit here and tell me just enough and then walk it back. Like I said, like one of the most frustrating things that I have ever seen is in this last congressional hearing. Mm-hmm. They had, I can't remember the guy's name, but they were talking to him and he was talking about how there was a craft that was recovered that had quote unquote non-human biologics on board.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And Congress was like, okay, well, can you describe what they were? No, I can't tell you that. Okay, can you tell me what they looked like? No, I can't tell you that. I've been sworn to secrecy, but there were non-biological human, there were non-human biological. You're telling me that they exist.
It could have been a plant-based material.
The way it was
that's
phrased,
why they say it. Yeah, that's why they say it like that, though. That's the thing. I mean, it's all about in the syntax of language used, how they're portraying it, the public statements being put out there. If you're saying non-human biologics, okay, fine. Yeah, as Shelley just said, that could be a plant, a virus, a bug, a whatever. We know what that means. I'm sorry.
Right, exactly.
You're talking about a, quote, down craft.
Right.
And non-human biologics. Put two and two fucking together. They've got bodies.
Exactly. They got bodies. They recovered from a craft and they recovered technology from
I'm sweating now.
Wherever that technology came from. Absolutely. Like, and it's like, dude, you can paint a turd. It's still a fucking turd, just tell me, that we know what you're talking about,
And that's Ryan's scientific explanation.
Yes, exactly.
Right,
extremely scientific.
Before we actually get into discussion, I told y'all that I wrote down my stance.
Right.
Because I didn't want to forget anything. And we have had many alien UFO conversations throughout the years since we've been
on and off air. I still we almost came to blows over disagreeing about one particular thing after an investigation.
So y'all have heard
a passionate debate.
Y'all have heard everything that I've had to say about aliens and UFOs. Mm-hmm. I'm going to read y'all because, like I said, I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget anything of what I could possibly tell y'all about where I stand on this now. So here is my stance. And it's somewhat lengthy, but we'll get through it.
Okay.
The question of disclosure isn't just about the existence of UAPs. It's about what their existence means for humanity. For me, the idea that UAPs are foreign government technology simply doesn't hold weight. The capabilities demonstrated by these phenomena, extreme speed, advanced maneuvers, and the absence of visible propulsion are far beyond anything known to us, including the most cutting-edge military technologies. So what does that leave us with? My belief is multifaceted. There's an extreme possibility that UAPs are extraterrestrial in origin, representing beings from other worlds with technology far superior to our own. On the other hand, they could be interdimensional entities existing alongside us in ways we can't yet perceive. There's also the theory that they could be ancient Earth technology, beings or crafts that have been here all along, hidden beneath our oceans or in places humanity yet to explore. The question, where do they come from? I don't know. I don't think anyone knows.
Well, I think it can be 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I mean, it could be all of those and none of those at the same time. Yeah. I mean, because we're not just beholden to, is this coming from outer space? Some could be coming from outer space. Some could be coming from within our oceans, and some could be coming through interdimensionally. We don't know.
But what I do know is that they are not ours, and they are not from foreign governments. There's something far beyond our current there is something far beyond our current understanding, and that very fact is why government transparency is so vital. Imagine encountering something in the sky, something you can't explain. What do? Without information, without guidance, you're left with nothing but fear and uncertainty. That's why I believe that the government has a responsibility to share what it knows, even if it doesn't have all the answers. Knowing what we're facing, or even just knowing that the unknown exists, could be life. Let me finish my stance.
No, I'm listening to you.
I think Brian just hear
You
Ryan.
saw him inhale, which means he's
Yep.
cutting you off at some
I know.
point. Go
No,
ahead.
Yeah.
I'm listening. I was just inhaled because I was thinking about something. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, knowing what we're facing, or even just knowing that the unknown exists, could be life-saving somehow in its own way. Yet, I also understand the hesitancy. Governments are built on authority, on the ability to lead without appearing weak. To admit fear or uncertainty about UAPs, objects that might defy our understanding of science, religion, and reality, could undermine that authority. How do you lead a society when you, too, are grappling with questions you can't answer? And this is where I think the breadcrumb approach comes into play. The slow release of information, the formation of task forces, the gradual acknowledgement that UAPs are real, seems to be conditioning us to accept what's happening without overwhelming us with the full truth. It's calculated, but I think it's also necessary in a world that fears what it doesn't understand. If UAPs are real, and all signs point to the fact that they are, what does that mean for humanity? For me, it shatters the idea that we are at the top of the food chain. Not in a predatory sense, but in terms of safety, security, and dominance. If these entities and technologies exist, they outmatch us in every way, and that's a humbling, even terrifying thought. The implications extend far beyond science. And what does this mean for religion, for faith? In a Christian worldview, humanity is made in God's image. So what does that make these beings? Questions like these could lead to a crisis of faith on a global scale, dismantling long-held beliefs and leaving many searching for answers that may never come. And yet, while fear dominates much of the discourse, I believe disclosure also holds the potential for growth. Understanding these phenomena could unite humanity in ways we've never seen before, forcing us to confront our differences and cooperate on a global scale. If we can overcome our fear, what could we learn and what might we gain? For me, the ideal future of disclosure is simple. We're told the truth, and we're given the information to understand and prepare. I know that won't be easy, and I know not everyone will accept it. This will always be a divisive topic, at least until something undeniable happens, like a spacecraft landing on the White House lawn, but that's not going to happen.
Probably not going to happen.
Yeah. Instead, I believe humanity will need to embrace this reality incrementally, just as we are now. Each new revelation, each piece of evidence is a step toward acceptance, and as we accept, we grow. Imagine what could come from true disclosure. Possible cure for diseases, advanced technologies to heal our planet, answers to questions about our universe that have lingered for centuries. Why wouldn't we want to know these things? And why wouldn't we demand the truth if it could shape a better future for humanity? Disclosure is not just about UFOs or UAPs. It's about understanding who we are and what our place is in the universe. The government may continue to withhold the full truth, but that doesn't change the reality that these things are out there. They're happening. And it's time that we face reality together. That's my written out stance on that.
I think you're absolutely
Be prepared
right
for this test.
I think you're absolutely
I didn't want to forget anything.
So I think you're absolutely right with the whole, the religion aspect of it. And also, like, where does it put our place in the universe? Like, how do we, it makes us that much more insignificant and small on this tiny blue marble, in this quadrant of the galaxy,
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of people, like you said, I think there's a lot of people that are grappling with that. And how does that look after we do know what's going on out there? Yeah. I also think the reason that they won't come out and say what it is I think because they would have to apologize to a whole lot of people, because how many people, how many pilots, how many National Weather Service, FAA, air traffic controllers, these people who have undeniably seen something that they cannot explain. And these are aviation professionals.
Yep.
And they were laughed out of their business, and they were shunned and taken away from the thing that they knew exactly what they were, their career, their livelihood, because they encountered something by chance they could not explain. And for them to come out and say, okay, well, now we're going to come out and tell you that this is all real and this is all happening, they would have to apologize to these people. And I don't think that they are big enough and would want to do that. I don't think they're big enough to do it.
They're responsible at this point for people's livelihoods, for people's lives, for people taking their own lives.
Absolutely.
Institutionalization of people. They're responsible for all of it.
Well, that's like
they would have to apologize for every single one of those and admit, we were wrong, and there would be repercussions to that.
Right. That's like, there's a famous case. There's an episode of Unsolved Mysteries about it. There was a guy who was working for the National Weather Service up on the Great Lakes, and he was getting, people were calling him because they were seeing these UFOs. He was getting these hits on the radar, and he watched them perform maneuvers on radar that nothing else could have performed. And he reported it to his superiors, and they laughed him out of the National Weather Service.
Yep.
The dude was just doing his job.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's one of the main reasons why they won't come out and say it. And I think that they're also scared of how society is going to react, because the joke is, people talk about on these UFO videos, they'll comment like, cool, aliens are real. Do I still have to pay my bills tomorrow?
Right.
So I think that they're scared of how society is going to react once that it is undeniable there is something out there. So that's why that slow drip is coming out, so they can kind of get people acclimated and be like, okay, yeah, aliens are real cool, whatever. What's next,
Yeah.
So I think one of the main reasons they don't that they don't come out and admit some of it, there's several, but if you think about it, especially in the United States, we are one nation under God, and I think that absolutely does challenge the idea. If God created everything, now I don't see how the two can't coexist, how one can't be over the other, but it challenges the idea of the singular deity in the sky that's looking down, ready to lavish you with good fortune or to punish you for misdeeds. So absolutely, I think that is part of it. Is a religious part, a religious aspect, because religion, let's be very honest, religion does control the world. There are, wars are fought. That's one of the number one causes of war in the past, is that, and they're still fighting wars today over religion. And also, I think part of it is that if there is government knowledge of aliens, and I think that there are, and I do think that there are other beings, I'm not so sure that perhaps they can't tell us about them, because maybe there is some kind of contract where the alien, species that has decided they're going to help us because we are a stupid fucking species. They're going to help us to not kill ourselves so that we, in fact become extinct. Perhaps the aliens have said, hey, listen, we don't really want them to know we're here. We don't want to get asked questions. We're going to talk to you. We're going to talk to you. We're going to talk to you. We're going to help you. As long as we're not looking for credit. We don't know. We don't want Zorg over here on this planet to find out about it. So keep your ass shut. I think it's entirely possible that there is some kind of contract that is between the government and another alien species, alien race, being from another world. I don't know. I find the term alien to kind of be, people immediately go, oh, that sounds crazy. You're talking about aliens. Let's just say another race of being.
Right.
So I think that's another one. I think perhaps our government is working in conjunction. And I think another reason they don't disclose what they've learned is because if we do get some kind of technology, we are in a power struggle on this planet, and it's whoever has the best toys wins, and whoever can defeat this group will win. They will be dominant. Now, very good and well that if you have a secret weapon and you're going to win a game, you're not going to share it with the guy you're trying to defeat.
Right.
So I think that's another good reason that if they do have these technologies that they're perhaps back engineered from captured crafts or things like that, they definitely don't want to share that knowledge with the rest of the world, especially if it gives them an advantage. I think it's a geopolitical kind of thing. So yeah, I think there's many reasons. I absolutely think that beings from another species have visited us. I think they're here. I think they're among us. But I don't necessarily think they want to be revealed. So
for me, it's kind of like this universe is so vast. There's so many galaxies. There's
God
so
help us if we're the only ones
here.
And
I was gonna say we cannot be the only planet that is sustaining life at some point. It's kind of the best analogy I heard or read while researching this. It's like dipping a spoon into the ocean, going, well, there's no whales because there's no whales in my spoon.
Right.
And it's bullshit. We know that the whales. We are finding. I think there was over 100 don't quote me, 100 to 150 new species found on the bottom of the ocean floor just last month.
Yeah, they're
and
finding
that's
new things
on our
all the
fucking
time.
planet. I think there's like 114 or something like that. And that's on our fucking planet. We're talking about the universe that is just you can't even comprehend the fucking size of.
and it's expanding always.
Yeah, I know.
You know, and two things, Shelley, what you just mentioned about the contract thing. How real this is, I'm not sure, but do you know who John Lear is?
I've heard the name.
So his dad was the guy who invented the Learjet, but he also became a UFO researcher. And John Lear has always said that there was a contract in place where we were able to get technology from whatever alien races we're in contact with, as long as they're able to abduct a certain amount of humans per year or whatever.
I've heard
So
that.
that's why,
yeah.
Yes. So that's why their abductions happen, and they don't really look into them seriously, because we're getting technology and we're back engineering.
Yeah.
And that was always his assertion. I don't know if that's true or not, but
I think while that can be possible, I think it is far more probable that this planet has something that they need. So perhaps the deal is that they give us certain technologies to help us, and they can take whatever these minerals are that they need, or rare metallics or earth elements that they need. They can take them and use them. So I think that's more likely the contract. I think abductions just happen by accident. It's like,
or they're just studying things.
Somebody wandered in the woods and they're like, oh crap, okay, he's seen us. We gotta take him up. Look at the blinky thing, please. And of course we can't leave out George Knapp either. George Knapp has made great strides in
absolutely
in disclosure and in getting people to talk to him. And it's funny because Ryan, you and I were talking about this, and I told you that for the longest time I tried to remember, where do I know George Knapp from, because I'd never met the man in person, but I knew this man. I'm like, I know this man. How do I know this man? And I've watched countless documentaries. He was on Channel 8 News in Las Vegas. I used to watch him on the news, and I'm like, that's where I know him from. And he was a special interest reporter, did special interest stories. And he kind of became the UFO guy where everybody wanted to go and talk to him. And there was do you remember the name of that new documentary? We were just talking about it the other day.
Alien. Oh God, not Destination. It's not Destination Alien.
No, it's like Alien Abductions or something. I don't know. And it's
the one on Netflix with George Knapp. It's really good.
It's on Netflix with George Knapp. Go watch it. It is fascinating.
It is.
Some of the things that he gets people to tell him.
Yeah.
If you don't believe in beings from other worlds, thank you, Investigation Alien. If you don't believe that there are beings from other planets that visit us, watch this. It will change your mind. And George Knapp is very
even keeled.
He's very unbiased. He listens to both sides. He asks questions, that kind of thing. But we would be remiss if we didn't at least mention him.
Right. And he's the one that broke that story with Harry Reid. Harry Reid went to him to break that story. So George Knapp has always been heavily involved in all that. And I would love to talk to that man and pick his brain. But so, and it's something else I wanted to address. So you were talking about like the religious aspect of it, and how, according to religion, we were created in God's image, right? And how some people are grappling with that versus if aliens actually do exist. I've always took that to mean spiritually and not necessarily physical appearance. So I think both can be true. I think that if these people are wrestling with this, I think that they need to look beyond appearance and look maybe spiritually at it.
Maybe we were created in his image of compassion, love.
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
Excellent.
Kindness.
Yeah. So that's something.
I don't, and again, that would challenge. Again, I'm not talking religion with you guys, because everybody believes what they believe.
Me neither.
But I do think that could be a reason that it is pulled back.
And it is. I mean, it is, because if what we believe to be, whatever religion or non-religion you subscribe to, whatever you believe to be the truth is completely challenged by the existence of whatever else is out there, because all the religions, even though there's a spiritual aspect to it, are very earth-centric. They don't talk about what happened on ZZOP 4, you know what I mean? So it's just, you know what I mean?
Derek asked, what was the name of the show we said to watch? It is Investigation Alien. And it's on Netflix.
Yep.
You can search Netflix
really
George Knapp. Fascinating. There you go, Derek. That's again,
it is Investigation
watching.
Alien, and it's like 6 episodes.
So it does challenge, like with if you are a part of religion, it does kind of challenge everything you believe if you're talking about the existence of whatever else is out there, because all those religions are very earth centric. So,
well, this is my final thought on this whole thing, because I wanted to cover just the disclosure aspect of it.
Right.
If you kind of take away all the I'm going to call them distractions. You take away all the fancy, shiny stories and everything like that, and you literally just follow the timeline from, let's say, even the Foo Fighter incident in World War II. And then you go to Kenneth Arnold, then you go to Roswell, then you come in with Project Sign, Grudge, Blue Book, moving into civilian organizations, MUFON, stuff of that nature, into what has later come up, like the UAP task force and stuff like that. I think it's pretty evident that, these things, these UAPs should be taken very seriously. It's showing you that if you take away all these shiny objects and you just look through all the noise and see what the government did throughout time, they are taking it very seriously. There is something there. There is something truthful behind the fact that we don't know what the fuck these things are.
No.
And they're continuing to investigate that. Yeah. And it's important enough to cover up and redact statements and redact paperwork and classified documents, stuff like that. So I think when people are starting to have these conversations about, do I believe in aliens? Do you believe, these UAPs are real and stuff like that, especially with all the shit that's going on with the drones and whatnot right now, which no, I didn't cover because it's too new. Maybe one day. But,
we don't have enough information yet.
Yeah, we don't have quite enough information of what they are. We'll just be sitting here bullshitting and shooting in theories all day long. Totally forgot where I was going with all this. But anyways, I think if you read through all the noise, I think it's pretty apparent that the government's been there all along.
Right.
Monitoring this shit, analyzing this shit. They're watching it. So I think when people start asking, are these things real? Are they legit? Yeah, wake up. Look at what's going on behind the scenes. Don't pay attention to the news stories and the shiny object over here and everything like that.
It's the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Exactly. What is the government doing? They are continuing to monitor, analyze, collect, and view these things in a light that need to be studied and investigated. That should give you enough of an answer right there.
Also, something to look at too is look at the ramp up since we got nuclear capabilities and where these things are showing up. They're showing up around these nuclear bases and have almost set off nuclear arsenals as well. Yeah. So, I mean, that's another aspect to look at it. So, I mean, I don't know where they're from. I think it's going to be a long time before we know where they're from. And I think they're from, I think like we were talking about earlier, all could be true. They could be coming from multiple places. So we'll just have to wait and see.
And my final thought is that I love all these stories. I believe there's something beyond this planet. God, there has to be. If we are the only chance of human survival, we are fucked.
Absolutely.
So I think there's something more. I think there's something beyond us. And I think that when the human collective consciousness is ready to accept that, I think that our visitors will know that, and that's when they'll let us know. But right now, I think that we're not meant to know. I don't think we're supposed to know. I sure would like to know, but I don't think we're at the point yet where we can understand, accept, and not try to shoot them down.
Yes.
I don't think that we're at that level of collective consciousness that we can accept what they need to let us know.
Yeah.
So with that, I really do hope that they're out there. And don't get me wrong, don't come visit me tonight. I'm busy. Ryan is completely free though.
Don't send them over here. You in a pasture somewhere. They're gonna come get you.
I am in a pasture. I am in prime territory. I'm out in the country in a pasture. However, I am not in a trailer park, so that is good for me. But anyway, so with that, Blake, why don't you tell them everything they need to know?
All right, y'all. Well, don't forget After Dark with EVP. All 3 seasons are currently streaming on Paraflix Paranormal Plus. We have 7 episodes on this past one and 8 episodes on season 1, season 2. Make sure you go check that out. You can watch Paraflix on Amazon Fire, Roku TV, Apple TV, iOS, and Google Play. For you audio listeners, use the link in your show notes, or you can go to our Facebook page on Wednesday morning to sign up. Click on the Linktree link, and there you will find the Paraflix link. Make sure you use our code AFTERDARK25 for 25% off your annual subscription, which makes it like $37.50, I believe. Also included in that Linktree link is going to be our Patreon page. Our Patreon is the fastest and easiest way to directly support the show. For just $5 a month, you'll unlock over 400 Patreon exclusive videos, which is content you won't see anywhere else. And your support goes directly back into the show and helps us to keep these wonderful adventures coming week after week. Best of all, that price is not going to change. With your subscription, you will get access to our pre pre and post broadcast shows, which is the 30 minutes before and the 30 minutes after each live episode, where we dive even further and have heated debates, goof off, tell stupid stories we shouldn't be telling in public, but we do it anyways. And also includes our never before seen investigation footage. You're getting an additional hour with us every single week. So if
We're
you get
sorry.
on Patreon, yeah, exactly. Don't forget, we do offer a 7-day free trial, so you can check it all out before you commit or have us committed, one of the two. So join us over on Patreon and be part of the EVP family. Make sure to follow us on all those social media channels. Also within that Linktree link on our Facebook page Wednesday morning. Just click on the icons at the top or search Everything Vaguely Paranormal on whatever platform and look for that green sound wave. And to you audio listeners, remember, you can catch us live, see our faces every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube. Again, we want to thank you all for your support. Every like, comment, share, and download helps to keep these adventures going. So make sure that you tell your friends and family about us. Right. And remember, if you have a story, comment, or question you'd like to share with us, those can be sent to the evppod@gmail.com. That is THEEVPPOD@gmail.com.
Go like, share, and subscribe to that YouTube page.
Absolutely. Well, y'all, thank y'all so much for joining us for another weekly episode of Everything Vaguely Paranormal. My name is Blake Smith, and with me are my partners in the paranormal, Miss Shelley Pruitt, Mr. Ron Roberts. We want to tell each one of you Happy New Year. We hope y'all celebrate.
Happy New Year.
Be careful.
Safely.
Yes,
Safely.
Be careful. Go out, have fun. Remember, no refusal weekends. Get home safe.
Right. And
Don't go out with anybody named Roger.
And thank you so very much for making our 2024 absolutely spectacular. It was the biggest year we've had so far, and we cannot wait for 2025 and to have an even bigger year and see you guys and get out in the field with you.
All right, y'all. We appreciate you. Happy New Year. Be safe. We love you.
Happy New Year. As always, we'll see you next Tuesday.
Bye-bye.
Good night, y'all.
Bye, guys.